Hey everybody, so I've recently watched a few videos which I'm going to link in my channel from Claire from Smurfy Girly, Sam from My World of Fragrance and Tara from Olfactophiles. All different, but basically talking about the influence of PR and brands sending bottles out to YouTube reviewers, other reviewers, influencers in general, and what kind of impact that has on people watching those or reading those reviews. And it got me thinking. I'm not going to be talking about, particular brands or bottles I don't accept or whatever, but it did inspire this video, and it's about hyped fragrances. And the ones I'm going to talk about, actually, apart from maybe one of them, wasn't necessarily a thing where these particular fragrances got sent out to a lot of people. But I remember back when I started my YouTube channel, and there were many less YouTube channels, a lot less YouTube channels, and fragrance influencers for that matter back then than there are now. And I remember watching channels, reading reviews, and there were a few perfumes that were around or released around that time that I saw a lot of, either on YouTube videos or read a lot of reviews about. And it got me thinking that these particular perfumes these days, like 6 years on, 5-6 years on, I don't hear about very much anymore. And these, I just want to mention a couple of these perfumes in this video because it interests me that something can get so much exposure, and I'm sure that there are many other perfumes that got a lot of hype and it's sort of disappeared now. So I wanted to mention these ones because I tried these ones at the time. I've even reviewed a few of these ones, and I may have even liked one or two of them at some point. And it's interesting because the other point to this was I was looking at my bottle collection the other day and checking when a lot of my bottles were released, and I realized that I didn't have any bottles in my collection apart from the Miscao parfums that I have that have actually had a release year, that were released in the last 5 years. And it got me thinking as well that I might sort of, when I'm looking at adding bottles to my wardrobe as well, I'm probably going to, I guess, semi-consciously think about the hype that it's gotten and whether it's around long enough for me to consider buying. I know it's probably not a factor that I should consider. If I like something, I like something, but a lot of the times probably people newer to the fragrance community can be seduced by all the nice words and things that people are saying about something. So anyway, I'll talk about a few here. So the first one I want to talk about, back when I started my channel, this particular perfume was definitely being sent around to the bigger YouTube channels of the day, and there were lots of videos about this. And these days I barely see anyone talk about it or post about it on Instagram, for instance. And it's 1821 Sweet Tobacco Spirits. Now, I actually bought a bottle based on the hype of the time, and I'm not going to sit here and say that these are bad perfumes. I think a big factor to this is that my tastes have simply changed. And back when I bought Sweet Tobacco Spirits, initially I liked it. It was something that I had not really smelled before, and over the time that I wore it, it gradually, I'll link to my review as well, and it gradually just, I realised I just wasn't enjoying what I was smelling. To me, it was, part of that big trend that's probably still a trend of sweet tobacco. This one had this weird kind of red wine note in it, and even now when I think about it, it kind of makes me cringe a little bit that it just wasn't something that I enjoyed smelling in that particular perfume. But the reason I mention it is because at the time, guaranteed you could look at any of the popular YouTube videos and someone had done a positive review of it. And these days, I barely see it mentioned at all as particularly, I really wonder how long some of these bottles stay in people's collections, and that one in particular, because I very rarely see anyone talk about it. The other one that that was talked about a lot as well, and this wasn't really a case of a bottle being sent around to influence. This is more a case of a perfume that smelled similar to a much more expensive, popular brand, and I'm talking about Mont Blanc Individuel and its comparisons to Creed's original Santal. Now, what's interesting about this for me is I also bought Individuel, and I also enjoyed it for some time until again my taste started to change, and to me this one was just a bit too sweet and kind of synthetic smelling, and ultimately I wasn't enjoying what I was getting out of it. And the comparisons were for Creed's original Santal, except for people who would argue that original Santal was made with better quality ingredients. How they can be that sure of it, I'm not sure, but it was more complex and also 10 times more expensive. So there had to be some kind of way to justify original Santal existing. I will admit that I don't have a lot of experience with original Santal, but the fact that it smells similar to that scent profile that Mont Blanc Individual had always kind of put me off wanting to test it anymore. It's really that sweetness that was inherent in both of those fragrances. But interestingly, original Santal is not a Creed perfume that does get spoken about much either. I don't hear or see much mention of it, and fair enough, like people want to make top 10 lists and so on, and they probably want to include newer perfumes. But again, this is a case of Creed being very popular. I mean, I guess it's probably still popular, but back then Creed was everything in the fragrance community, and due to the popularity of Aventus and the staples of Green Irish Tweed and so on, and original Santal was just one of those ones, along with Mont Blanc Individual, that would get compared a lot. Here's your cheaper version. If you like original Santal, you'll love Mont Blanc Individual because it's a lot cheaper. Then we have perfumes that are hyped almost because of who's releasing them and the marketing around them. And I specifically recall when Tom Ford released Fucking Fabulous. I hope I'm not going to get demonetized for saying that word. Effing Fabulous. And there was, just the amount of posts and videos I saw, a lot of YouTubers wanting to be the first to review it. And ultimately I found that fragrance, when it all boiled down to just the scent itself, was ultimately really kind of disappointing for me. And so there's that type of hype as well about, this controversial Tom Ford perfume, and that's what Tom Ford does, I guess, but it really sort of started to open. I mean, my eyes were probably already opening, but really kind of drew my attention to the fact that marketing plays a big role in some of the hype that some of these perfumes get, and that generally is in the designer realm as well, because they have that budget and can also afford to be a little bit more controversial and attention grabbing. And the last one I'm going to mention here, and this one I guess is more came to mind because of a particular trend in perfumery, and in particular what consumers were buying, what was being put out a lot of. And I'm talking about a few years. I mean, I think it's kind of died down now, but the oud trend, like, you know, every second release that was coming out featured a note of oud, and it was being pushed forward as a marketing strategy. You know, like Tom Ford released Tobacco Oud. Black Afghano was very popular for Nascimato as well. And in the middle of all that, Tiziana Terenzi released a perfume called Laudano Nero. And again, this was on a lot of YouTube channels as well when it was released. This combination of oud and tobacco and booziness. For a while there, it was the I guess the note pyramid du jour, if you like, and I'm kind of really relieved that it seems that we're moving away from that trend, because like there was really an overload of oud perfumes, all the design. I mean, Guerlain are now getting in on the act a little bit late, in my opinion, and of course there's lots of variety within that spectrum of oud perfumes. A lot of these brands use synthetic ouds instead of the real stuff, and that perfume was also underwhelming when I smelled it as well, and I get why it was popular. And speaking of Tiziana Terenzi, like it's a house that I've been generally underwhelmed by with some of the stuff I've tried from them. But nevertheless, they're popular with Fragcom and influencers, and I'm not sure. I personally don't see why. I want to stress though that me talking about these perfumes, I'm not saying that they are objectively bad perfumes at all, but it definitely coincided with what my tastes were at the time, how my tastes in perfumes developed, and I just found it interesting that these recent videos that I've watched made me think about the influence of PR and how stuff is promoted that can make something become very popular in our circles, I guess, for a while. But to me, none of the 4 perfumes that I've mentioned, I think personally, have gone on to become, you know, like, well, I don't want to use the word classics, but there are some perfumes that got released at the same time and still get talked about. And I think the point I'm trying to make is that is still a good indicator for me that there is quality. There's a reason why people keep talking about it, keep mentioning it, rather than just being the fad of the moment. And because there are a lot of bottles in circulation in the hands of influencers, you're going to see a lot of them on social media. And I guess my advice to any newbies that might be tempted to like fall for that would be just hold back for a while. And if you can, you know, there's so many perfumes you can try that have been around, stood the test of time. Hold back for a while and see if people are still talking about these perfumes in 1 or 2 years' time. So that's my little rant for the day. That's all I wanted to talk about and make a video on. And obviously I'm very interested in comments from people watching this video. Do you still like any of these perfumes? Do you still wear them? Do you still own them? And what are other perfumes that you think were sort of popular for a moment in time and sort of kind of disappeared off the scene. I could have probably mentioned a few more, but I wanted to stick to the four, and I really wanted to talk about the topic in general rather than those individual perfumes. So thank you for watching again, and I look forward to my next video and seeing you all in the comments, and I'll see you soon. Thank you. Bye.